Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the South Carolina Disaster Corps podcast, the exclusive podcast that is dedicated to the education of South Carolinians in a variety of topics within emergency preparedness, and the only one that strives to apply that knowledge to increase community awareness, resilience, and service. I'm your host, Sawyer Ruiz, and welcome to episode 7 of the South Carolina Disaster Corps podcast. Today, we're joined by Jonathan Webster, who's going to be speaking with us about first aid basics and some of his experiences at EMS. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, Jonathan.
I work for Anderson County EMS, and there I work as an EMT, so emergency medical technician, and I also do logistics for us. And I'm in paramedic school, so I'll be done with that in May. I'll be a nationally registered paramedic here in Anderson.
Perfect. So first question, why is it important for the average citizen to have first aid training?
That's like a jam-packed question. So what I usually say is everyone calls us EMTs and paramedics, firefighters, law enforcement, they call us the first responders, when in reality we're emergency responders. The first responders are the ones who, the everyday people who are on the scene first. They're the first ones there, they're the first ones to, in the realm of first aid, they're the first ones to provide first aid and the first care. And then they call us, the trained emergency responders, to come in and then provide that care and ultimately definitive care at the hospital. And so it's super important that, the average citizen have at least basic first aid training. The basics are, the most important basics I think are like CPR and AED use, and a newer type of training that's come out over the past few years, which is stop the bleed training, which teaches people to stop life-threatening hemorrhaging using tourniquets and direct pressure and stuff like that.
And for most of the members of the audience who probably don't have any of those trainings, both myself, Cameron, and Jonathan are all trained in all those. They're really not that difficult. They're all very simple trainings.
It's super simple, and it only takes a matter of, you can go from training every single day of the year to just a couple hours of class, and then you know how to do it.
Definitely. I remember we were in CERT class together, and we did AED training, and I was under the impression that AEDs would be a lot more complicated than they are, but they literally tell you what to do. They literally speak to you, and it's really cool.
You open it up, and it walks you right through it, and it tells you what to do, and yeah, it's the easy. I mean, a monkey can do it. Yeah. Literally. So.
It's incredible just how far all that's come. So those are the basics of first aid, those categories. In your opinion, what are some ways that citizens can receive first aid training? Where should they go?
There's a lot of different places that offer first aid training, whether it be online or in-person classes. Obviously, in the days of COVID, a lot of stuff is online now. It's actually pretty miraculous how that's worked out. The technology allowing us to learn those things online. Even us as emergency responders, we have to do a certain number of training every year to maintain our certifications. And we can get a lot of those online now, especially because of COVID, which has been great for me. I did my online CPR refresher I think in August. But as things start to open back up with COVID and people are able to go and meet in person, the Red Cross is a great resource for classes. They teach, everything from babysitter first aid to advanced first aid. They even teach some first responder courses. The AHA, American Heart Association, is a great resource. That's who I'm certified through in advanced life support stuff as well as basic life support stuff, trainings. ASHI, American Safety Health Institute, they're another great resource. I teach through them. I teach CPR. I think I'm certified to teach 9 different courses in first aid. Basic stuff, wilderness first aid. Stuff that's just, in my opinion, is great, valuable stuff for other people to know.
So those are some good ways to get some specialized training beyond the basics,
right,
is to go to places like that and pick up that kind of training.
Right.
Now, in your own time, what do you do to train? Or what should the audience do to keep up to date in their own time other than those refresher courses?
One thing I like to do is to read scientific journal-based medicine, because every day there's new stuff coming out. And for me, working on an ambulance, running 911 calls, I work under a set of protocol. And so for me to refresh on my protocol and continue learning what I have to do in certain situations, that's how I tend to train more. Also, the skills that you don't use often are the ones you need to train in more. And so for me, we don't run a lot of pediatric stuff. And so I want to train in that more because it makes us uneasy when we get that kind of stuff. And so same goes for just average people looking to get first aid training, is things that you don't think you'd encounter, those are probably what you should train in the most. Once you have a set understanding of the other type of training. But for sure, I would say that the biggest things everybody should know, and I think they teach it in high school and maybe even middle school now, are just CPR and AEDs. Those are the things that can save a life. Sudden cardiac arrest happens suddenly, and so
yes,
that's you have to be prepared and know how to do that. Same with the stop the bleed training I mentioned earlier. Is you don't expect some major bleeding to happen, but everyday car accidents happen. You could have contractors at your house cutting up some trees and chainsaw slip or an axe, and crazy things like that, they do happen. I have firsthand experience with that, and so having people get that training is really vital to saving lives. And
definitely. And we've promoted CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, a number of times on our show. Both of us highly recommend that you get involved with that, because you get a lot of really good training and you get to work with a lot of really cool people, good people during that. So that's another resource that the audience, you guys should really try to look into and use.
I just, right before coming here, I just left the final exam for the CERT class they're doing this semester at AU. Did a mass casualty exercise at the Emergency Operations Center. So
definitely. Now, you mentioned you work on an ambulance, and I would actually like to hear some of your stories, and you can share to the audience about working on an ambulance. But before we get into that, if someone's interested in becoming like a paramedic or EMS, what kind of steps should they start taking to get to that? Yeah,
so there's 3 basic levels in emergency medical services, EMS. You have the EMT, Emergency Medical Technician, which is what I'm currently certified at and have been for about 3 years now. Then there's an EMT Advanced, and they're able to do some more advanced procedures. Then there's a paramedic who they do a lot of advanced life support stuff. So they can start IVs, they can give a lot of medication, they can do advanced airways, procedures like that. So if you want to get involved in that, there's a national shortage of people getting involved in this profession, which is unfortunate because it's a great profession to be in. But if you want to get involved, your local technical college will definitely have a program to offer. There's even online classes to do now. So this paramedic program I'm in, we started July 13th, and it's a hybrid program to get me a fast track to my paramedic. So it's a 10-month program, and it's half online, half in person. So we did all of our didactic textbook knowledge-based learning online, and now we're doing all of our clinicals in person, so we're close to home. But you can do an online program, you can do in-person classes. There's a lot of opportunity. For people that are still in high school that might want to be interested, there's Explorer programs or junior programs. That's how I got my start when I was 15. You go ride as a third person on an ambulance with an EMT and a paramedic, and you go run 911 calls and see if that's what you want to do. And that's what I recommend to anybody that wants to get into it.
Perfect. So some stories from the back of an ambulance. Let's. I know recently we were speaking before the show that you had a train derailment. Unfortunately, that was a little bit boring from what I've heard. But
thankfully,
yeah, I'm about to say, boring is good.
It is good.
Train derailments can be pretty bad.
Yes,
they can go very bad.
The way it got dispatched to us, what's today? Wednesday, Monday. We would have been at that. It got dispatched as like 4 train rail cars overturned, unknown substance spilling out. So everybody from the county is responding because unknown injuries, and we get there and it's none of the rail cars are actually derailed. They're just slightly offset the railroad tracks, and they're actually carrying a paper product, so nothing hazardous, no injuries. And so it ended up being more of a technical job placing the train cars back on the rails.
Gotcha. That's more engineers.
That's more firefighters and engineers in the railway system.
Our last guest, Andrew Culp, was also at that scene, and that's
what he got to do.
That's what he got to do. He's
the firefighter there. Yep.
So, have you gotten to do any fun stuff for your clinicals with becoming a paramedic?
So, as an EMT, we do a lot of. We're trained in basic life support, so BLS, basic life support. And we can give some medications and stuff like that. Becoming a paramedic, I'm able to do a lot more for my patient. And so I'm able to start IVs, intraosseous infusions into the bones. I can intubate advanced airways, give a lot of medications. I think there's 137 medications I'm trying to learn right now. So to me, that's fun. I get to use my knowledge and skills to treat people in the emergency setting. I'm also getting to work in the hospital a little bit. I have to get 200 hours in the hospital of clinical time. And so I've never worked in a hospital, so getting to be in the hospital is pretty interesting. Different pace for sure. And I've got to do another 300 on the ambulance for a total of 500 hours, which is different working as from being an EMT the past 3 years to becoming a paramedic. It's very different, my role, my responsibility.
Definitely. In fact, working in the hospital, that must be quite a shift.
Yeah, it's different. You know, on the ambulance, I'm working either a 12 or 24-hour shift, and I may be running 20 calls in those 24 hours, or I may only have 4 or 5 calls, depending on where I'm stationed. But in the hospital, it's pretty steady. Mm-hmm. You're always having people come in, whether they're coming in via ambulance or they walk in or drive themselves, whatever it may be. And I get to see a wide array of different people. So on the ambulance, typically people utilize 911 for emergencies, how it's intended to be used. Not always. And so you get more critical things, more critical patients in different cases. But in the hospital, you get all of it. You get, you know, the critical stuff. You also get, you know, I stubbed my toe or I've got a stomach ache. And so getting to reorient my thinking of, hey, this is how I need to treat this person. It's not quite an emergency setting, but they do need this treatment. And that's what's been enjoyable for me, is learning a different pace and a different side of it. I definitely prefer the emergency stuff on the ambulance. That's more my pace. But
Gotcha. So you prefer the more fast pace.
I do.
But I think it's good that you're learning to also the slow pace side of medical services as well.
The fast paced stuff's not, you know, some people can do it for a whole career. In my opinion, it's not quite sustainable for me. It's hard working 24-hour shifts. Or I enjoy it while I'm young, but getting to understand the other side of it makes me think, okay, I might want to do that in the future.
Gotcha. And going a little bit off topic, you also work logistics.
I do.
With, for those of you, Dr. Howard Murphy. We work closely with him. Mm-hmm. So you work logistics. What is that like?
So for logistics, Anderson County EMS, in of ourselves, we run QRVs, quick response vehicles, to back up the private EMS services. They provide ambulances that can transport. Our quick response vehicles each have one paramedic on them, and they're able to go work autonomously and begin care before an ambulance arrives or to back up an ambulance. And so we run 7 of those right now. And we, as far as logistics go, my job is to maintain the vehicles, make sure they're up to date on the service and all that. But more specifically, restart their equipment, all the supplies they use. You know, anytime we start an IV, we have to bunch of different equipment that we use to start that. Any call, we're using equipment. Even if we're just putting a Band-Aid on somebody. When they run low on Band-Aids, I go take them some Band-Aids back to their truck so they can stay in service.
Let's say logistics is often overlooked, but it is one of the vital pillars of any organization.
Yeah, certainly.
I think that we're getting close to our time, so that'll be all. Thank you for coming on the show, Jonathan. It's been great having you, and I'm sure our audience is going to love hearing all of this about first aid. You're very welcome. For any listener who has questions, you can email us at scdisastercorps@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at scdisastercorps. If you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment in the comment section, and we can answer that as well. You're able to find our podcast on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google